also launch the Facebook. That will take a few seconds, a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to breathe and relax during that time. For me to do all the settings during that.
I will do a pre-centering and then we'll center again. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we're now live on Facebook.
Wahoo!
Yahoo, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we have the great pleasure to have this webinar about energy management and how to use it to build our relational presence. Where I'm Marianne Dupuis. I'm a coach and supervisor, and I'm the president of the Association of Coaching Supervisors and Mentors. And we are hosting this with Felicia. Felicia Lauw is also a coach and accredited supervisor. She's also a faculty member of a Coaching Supervision Academy, who's delivering training to accredited supervisors. And very well versed into energy management, and usually presented during the CSA trainings. And we have Emma as participant who's recently joined us, and we are happy to include in our session too. So energy management, can you just share a little bit more about what's this topic about, Felicia?
Thank you, Marianne, first of all, for welcoming me. And thank you for Emma for joining us live on Facebook. Energy management is something that sounds mystical, but actually is part of how we are as a person. In our school days, we've been taught to use a lot of our rational thinking and reasoning, but very little has been spoken about in terms of our energy field, our peripersonal space, and how that interacts with each other. So when often in the early days when I was growing up, you go for communication classes, they teach you all the tactical, rational things. You know, how do you build rapport? How do you smile? You sit. I mean, to the extent of how you sit, body language, that's about it. But nothing goes beyond that. But actually the first point of contact between you and I is actually our energetic fields. You know, if you look into the newer discovery of, not the newer discovery, but newer exploration of quantum physics and neuroscience. If you start to put all these things together, you start to see that, you know, the whole person is coming up, the study of the whole person versus just our head. So I was just talking to Marianne a little while ago. Marianne, was how do we engage our head, heart, and gut, which, you know, is our three centers of our energy field. And that's energy management. And if allow me to go a little bit further, because I was reflecting on relational presence. How is that different from presence? Because I suspect there's a lot of the community out there watching this. You probably are in mindfulness space, or you know how to bring yourself to a presence. You guys are fantastic at doing that. But the difficult part comes when I'm sitting in front of a person, or I'm holding a group like this. I then need to hold relational presence. So the demand is slightly different versus like I control my thoughts, you know, I'm aware of what I'm thinking, but yet you still need to keep that connection going. So I love this energy management piece around relational presence because there is an interaction that goes on. And so that it requires several levels of consciousness of our own energy field. So I'll stop there. I can go on forever.
So our topic today is not only to be present to ourselves, but also to include our coachee when we are working together so that we can really enhance the quality of our presence to even a higher level.
Exactly.
Great. Felicia, I think you wanted us to start on a very high tone with a centering exercise.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. So this exercise, I have to give credit to my teacher, who is Wendy Palmer, and she leads the Leadership Embodiment Institute. So I've trained with her. It's a very short breathing exercise to center. The only thing I would say is that when we breathe in, just imagine the energy coming up from the bottom of our feet to the crown of our head. And when we breathe out, the energy flows the other way around. Sorry, I'm hearing echo.
Yes, me too.
So what should I do?
Is there any phone opened that could be switched off?
Okay. I will speak slowly and hear my echo slowly.
Yes, doesn't seem that we can do much more right now.
Okay. It's too much energy flowing in the field. Okay, so let's, I'd like us to, either cast our eyes down, or you don't have to close your eyes, just don't look at the screen. And then as you breathe in, just uplift through your spine, recovering your dignified posture. And then long exhale, down your front, softening your chest. And think of someone that makes you smile. Good, lovely faces, smiling faces, great. And then expand your peripersonal space in all directions in the room that you're in. Some may experience it as a color or a body warmth. So whatever you do, just push your peripersonal space out to the four corners of your room. The front, the back, to your left, to your right, on top of your head, below your feet. Just settle into that space. Okay, and we settle and we just reference, have a look at, or have a sense of the space around you and the room that you're now encompassing. One more step. If you can now push your peripersonal space out a little bit to also include all of us on this call. We don't have to know who they are, but just include everyone and hold everyone in this space with the highest possible regard. So breathe. Take a few deep breaths, slowly coming back. Feel your hands, your feet, the physical stuff in the room. And when you're ready, we come back. How are you feeling?
Very relaxed, very grounded. What about you, Emma?
Also very relaxed, very calm, and very open.
Thank you. Right, so that's a centering exercise that if you see, it doesn't take too long. At max, because I gave a little bit more instructions. But this is what we call the longer centering version, which takes 20 seconds. There is a 5 seconds one. And in this day of speed and quick interactions, we need to find a way to quickly come back to center And that's one of the fundamentals of relational presence. It doesn't mean that we will be fixated the whole 30 minutes or 45 minutes of conversation. We won't be able to. We will sometimes come back in our mind flutters. We have thoughts, something the clients say, gave us a reaction, or something in the environment. Just like I saw someone in Emma's background walk past, and my attention got drawn there, and I just breathe and come back. So that is really about, really noticing our environment and noticing our energy and bringing it back with a centering exercise like that.
So you're saying that the centering exercise is for us to prepare the session as well as for us to bring our attention back? I guess there would be different versions. We can't necessarily afford to be distracted for 20 seconds and back.
Wow.
Or we do exactly the same. When you're distracted during a coaching session and you need to bring your attention back, would you use that very same exercise?
Well, I'll do the quickie one. I'll do the 5 seconds one where I breathe in, dignified posture, smile, settle, come back.
Can you show us what's that dignified posture?
Well, let's do an experiment. I love that question. So I'd like you to sort of, close yourself up, cross your arms, look down, so sort of be as small as you want to. And think about recently, nothing too big, but something unpleasant, something, that's not quite going your way. Nothing too big. So thing like, oh, I missed the bus, or, some small irritation like that. So good. Tell me how you're feeling right now and what you're thinking.
Restricted, a bit bitter. Yes, constrained.
Yeah, what I'm getting, Marianne, when I look at you is a little bit of a frustrated and worried, the frown on the face is quite apparent. I know you're smiling, however, there is an underlying frown. Yeah, great. Emma, what about you?
I feel frustrated, and I feel like narrowed, like my possibilities are less. I feel like there's no easy path. It feels restricted.
Good, thank you. And that's how our body responds when we're off center, so we're small. So let's try this. Let's take a 5 seconds one. So we breathe in, uplift, breathe out. Think of someone that makes us smile. Just because we're doing this possibly for the first time, let's do it again. So breathe in, like a string pulling up, dignified posture, shoulders relaxed. Breathe out, settle, think of someone that makes us smile. Good. So that was slightly more than 5 seconds, but we did it twice. So let's bring back what you thought about earlier. How do you see it now?
Yeah, obviously it's more open, way more optimistic, and looks like, somehow doable.
Yeah, and you can't see yourself, Marianne, but the frown that was on your forehead is now gone. Yeah.
And actually, it's amazing how the impact can be so quick. So to change the body shape from a closed body shape into a open and centered body shape has instant impact.
Yeah. And in terms of relational presence, the instant impact is not just on you. When we see each other, limbic resonance, we start to mirror each other. Our happy neuron starts to act up. And we all supported each other. And that's relational presence in practice. Right? So can you imagine your clients coming into a session is usually quite stuck, or, thinking they have something to think through. They're probably coming from that closed position. And if we mirror them, yes, Emma.
I was just going to say that I've actually tried it with a couple of clients where I've seen they've come rushing from a meeting, they're super stressed, there's so many things going through their mind. And I invite them to just sit down with me and just take a few deep breaths and just calm themselves and know that this time that we spend together is for them. And it's amazing how big of an impact it can have. Just that few breaths at the start of the session.
Yeah. So thank you, Emma, for bringing that into the space, because that's how we prepare the clients and the sessions energetically before you launch into the rational. Marianne.
So in terms of preparation, there is this the breathing in, and also having someone in mind that makes you smile, so that you are on a more positive and uplifting mindset and more grounded. As well as you mentioned when we started very early about the intention.
Yeah.
Can we also bring an intention, an overarching intention in our coaching?
Yeah, of course you can. And what would be your intention if you're holding a coaching session? Are they different for different people?
Quite generic in the sense that I would want the coachee to progress to the best they can, and with full respect for who they are and for the greater benefits of people around them. So I guess that would be, for me, rather generic.
Yeah. And I noticed that when you say generic, there's a little bit like a shyness behind generic. Generic is good because generic means it's consistent. And the more practice you have with one intention, it gets stronger because your attention keeps going back to the same thing. And you're training your body to go also almost, I hate to use the word autopilot, but almost sit in a session or whole, start a Zoom session when you're coaching, your body prepares itself naturally. So if I detect a bit of the shyness around generic, I want to just acknowledge and say that's good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Emma, what about you?
Emma, you're on mute.
Sorry. I just unmuted myself. Yeah, I agree with Marianne. I think what we're hoping for in each coaching session is the coachee comes and brings their whole self to the session so that they get the maximum benefit from having that session. So I think it is the same with everybody, although of course every client is unique, every client is individual, and every client will come wanting different things.
That's true. And the overarching intention actually is better to be generic than specific, because then when you're generic, you basically create a much bigger space for holding whatever the situations and people and stories that they bring into coaching. So back to that generic word is a very good word.
The thing is, with coaching having an impact beyond the coachee, we probably need to set our intention larger than the coach and the coachee even.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that. So with relational presence, we often, the intention is, or the attention becomes myself, the person sitting in front of me. But what happens usually is we are not aware that we have systems behind us, that we both bring our own energetic field from those systems into the conversation, right? It could be my family, my client's organization, his family. So actually the room is quite crowded in a conversation, and managing all that energetic field can be quite tiring at times if we're not careful. Because if we don't know what is ours and not others, we often, because energetic field meets and collude, we often, I've heard many coaches tell me that, I'm so tired after this client. Well, the rational side of us will go, yeah, you work too hard. As mentors would say, we're probably working too hard. That is probably true. The other thing that is more subliminal is the energetic baggage that baggage not the right word, but the energetic influence that we bring from that system into our system. And if it triggers something within our own psyche and system, that sort of gives it a weight. If we don't interact with it, that's fine. If nothing gets hooked in our system with that, so there's no resonance at that energetic level, then it's fine. We won't, oh, it's your story. Okay, I get it. I can be empathetic, but I won't dive into the story. A lot of times we dive in is because something within our psyche got hooked. And our energy follows because our attention went there.
So what could be some signals or some signs or something, some hints for us to notice that we're coaching, that it actually doesn't really belong to us, or we are at the edge of being fully drained and not necessarily being grounded anymore?
Yeah. I had a reaction around fully drained. I'm like, yes, that's what supervision is for, to help us. We exercise, we go to the gym, we keep physically fit. To me, going for supervision is keeping me fit for my coaching practice, so that I don't work on like the last string of energy left. Doesn't serve me or my client. So back to your question, how do I know? So the very first thing is, when we work with our own body, I'm sure we have like different ways of meditating. You do qigong, or different spiritual practice as well. Actually, is regardless, in all different practices and cultures, I see they have their own way of mindfulness. So getting to know what is yours, that is your own work. Because then you have a general idea, okay, what that is. Of course, you can also come to supervision and discover why did you have a specific reaction. So if you already know your norm, and then one day when you're working with a client, you suddenly go, oh, what's that? So my encouragement is bring it to a supervisor and talk it through and understand what's the hook behind that. That will help us to build consciousness around, our own energy field, what's ours, what's not ours. Yeah?
Yeah.
And if we know that we are draining, you could just see your life force going out. Like, center is the best way to come back, to just give yourself enough juice to carry on for however long you need to. And as a coach, be brave to also reflect on, oh, I'm feeling really, really more and more tired and more bored, whatever the feeling is. Put it back into the field with your client and say, when you hear that, what's that for you? Is there anything that comes up for you when I say that? So that could also be an ingredient for the coaching conversation.
So using self in sharing with the client how we felt, so that it can open and start a different conversation.
Yeah. Well, there's one classic story I tell. I think I can repeat it here. So I was working with a client. This client know I'm using this story, by the way, just to clear ethics. I was getting really bored. I'm usually not one that get bored with my client, but at that point, I'm like, oh, my energy was very low. If I could draw my heartbeat, it was almost flat. It's like, I'm so tired, I was going to sleep and was bored. So I reflected back and I said, look, I don't know why, but I'm suddenly very bored in this conversation. What's happening? And my client said, yeah, actually, I'm very bored with myself. She said, it seems like this is something that I've been working on. I thought I had some, headway. And then I come back again, so that was going on in her belief system. Yeah. So and by saying that, actually our intimacy and our trust in the conversation has gone up. The relational presence was really good. It's not only that I relate well to her, she relates well to me. Because we kind of found the right frequency to connect at.
I had a very interesting question on when I was doing the webinar on cross-cultural, and that was really linked to energy management as well.
Mm.
So the question was about how do we handle when we are actually coaching in Malaysia someone who is a client in the US,
Mm-hmm.
and in terms of, because we're on two different time zones, and sometimes the time of the day is not necessarily making us so energetic at that very time.
Uh-huh.
We can have quite of a difference. So for example, the client is tired, low energy, and the coach is very enthusiastic, very eager to go. How do we, or vice versa, how do we align, or how do we meet so that we have that that energy that is not so different? Or is that actually useful that we have such a gap in terms of level of energy to
Oh.
still be in that relation?
Well, obviously we can't be sleepy. We've got to be awake for a coaching ethically, for a coaching session. So being awake is like my minimum. And when I say awake, awakening to our own body sensations as well. For example, if it's like 11:30 our night, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it happens. So just beginning to know that, okay, the tiredness is mine, not the client's. And then when the client is bubbly and energetic, and what I heard, Marianne, correct me if I'm wrong, is you're trying to match the energy level, or should we not match? That's the question.
Yeah, should we match or not? I mean, if the client is in low energy and I'm really bubbling, then if I do not match, am I pushing too fast or pushing too much? Or do I need to slow down? Do I need to lift that person? So what would be a best way to increase the relational presence in that sense?
I am reflecting on the word match. When we're matching, we basically we're trying to bring one to the other. We're not meeting. Mm-hmm. Relational presence is about meeting in a space, in a common space. So regardless of where you start from, here or here, how do you manage your energy and the conversation to meet at this space where it's useful for working in a coaching session? Because being very bubbly may not be, very useful. And being very low, obviously, we know we could get a bit more gas in the tank. Right, so it's about how you slowly get the two to come to a level, to have that conversation, to have that space, that sacred space for that useful conversation to happen.
So that can definitely go through words, in the sense that we will engage the conversation, ask the contract, enter the world and have permission to enter the world. Now, in terms of heart and gut, is there anything else that we need to do? Just not only to be in our head and talking.
Yeah, very good question. So which leads me to, encapsulating your client or whoever you're speaking to into what I call your energetic bubble. So remember when we're breathing up and lengthening and smiling, and there's one step in the 20 seconds when I said extend your peripersonal space. So you imagine that you're filling up the room now, okay? And if your client is in the States, tally, thousands and thousands of miles away, so you would be energetically encapsulating the person in your bubble. So sending your intention out, paying attention to your own breath. It's like you guys are in Malaysia right now, but you're in my bubble. Right? Doesn't matter. So I hold you with my highest best regard. And then I pick up what you're feeling. I pick up, you start to, resonate with me as well. We both resonate. We all know, right? All things, it will come to a steady state. Is that making sense? Emma, how are you doing?
Yeah, it's making perfect sense, Felicia. And sometimes, to go back to what you're saying about naming it. So when I first started out, I was really scared of naming it. And then I realized how useful it is to name it. So if you're sensing something from the client, I'm sensing something around you being really tired today, or whatever it is, and having that conversation about whatever it is that you sense, I've found that every time I've been brave enough to say it, it's invariably been right, that sense. And then it opens up a really useful conversation, which is really beneficial for the client.
Lovely, Emma. And what I would invite you to think about it this way is that, when we're picking up something, we're picking up from the field. So it may not be necessarily from the clients. Because if you say, I sense you are tired, it can come across as a judgment.
Yes. So that's why I said I'm sensing something around tiredness, which could be my tiredness, it could be the client's tiredness, but either way, when I say something around, it's I find that really, really beneficial for both the coach and the client.
Beautiful, yes. And so that also, it reminds us and it helps us in our competency. Because it's very easy, because when we want to share something we feel, a lot. What I sometimes see is that some of my other associates, they would say, I think you're tired, or you're worried, or whatever. It's a very natural conversation habit that we have, which we then need to watch as a coach. So actually the field then helps us, because I'm picking this up from the field. I'm not sure if it's yours or mine, but there's something here. Does it make any sense to you at all? So it takes away that judgment totally, because the space is supporting all of us.
Yes.
From an energetic perspective, yes. Yeah.
It could be too that we're actually picking way larger than really the client. I mean, for example, when we were about this time in Malaysia last year about the election, we could really sense that there were undercurrent here and there, and that people had these pressure or hope or desire, and you cannot escape it.
No. Beautiful point, Marianne, because remember I talked about we bring our systems into a conversation. So the system's energetic field is very much in it. So if you talk to America, you probably have some Trump in the conversation, Trump ingredient. Yeah, you talk to people in British, there's probably some Brexit stuff. If you talk to Chinese and American, you probably pick up some of those stuff, even though they may not be aware of it. So yes, just being aware of all that helps me actually to remember that this is not my client, So what it really does for me when I look at things from an energetic point of view is that I have this, what I call unconditional love for everyone in the system, including myself. This acceptance that we talk about in coaching. But to be really, not a forced empathetic way of, oh, I see, or you need help, nothing of those unclean dynamics. But it's just coming from, we're all trying our best, we're all influenced, we're all equal. We can't run away from it, including myself, and let's work with it. It's in the system.
Yes. Thank you. So we talked a lot about how to prepare before the session. We touched a little bit also about how to handle when we're distracted and we don't need to bring it back, or when we have discrepancies and we want to meet somewhere in between. Is there anything we also need to do to protect ourselves?
Say more about protecting yourself.
Yes, when we talk about picking things, and from ourselves, from the client, from from the system. I mean, for example, we could have a client who's an executive and who's reporting to someone who's bullying or very oppressive. We will definitely pick something around that.
Mm-hmm.
That will probably influence the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
How can we not get thrown into that as well in an energetic way?
And how do you do it right now?
Well, I guess that goes a little bit in the unconditional love, finding out what is the underlying reason that this person could be bullying the other.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, grounding back so that we consider the person rather than the behavior, and trying to empower the coachee. Yes, I guess there are plenty of other ways too.
There are plenty of other ways, and so it sounds like you're already doing this very well. And just to add one more way, which is the energetic way, is that, remember we talked about the encapsulating your client? So what I do is I breathe and then explain and then include the abusive, I put it in brackets, the abusive person or the person in question, and include the person in the bubble. And the inclusion is only for the duration of the session. Let me be clear about that. That's why contracting is so important, because contracting, yes, rationally, outcomes and all that, brilliant stuff, very good. But energetically, for me, is also a box up the energetic exchange. So when I come into session with you, I'm with you fully. But when I'm out of session with you, I'm out of your life fully. And you're out of my life fully, energetically. So I cut. Cut may seem like a very harsh word, but we do have to, because our job, our profession is to serve the next person that comes in our path. If we don't have that clean boxing, we don't have that clean cut, then what we are doing is we're colluding this energetic field into the next one. So it's important to do that. And your question was, back to your question, Marianne, around how do I, when I'm distracted, what do I do? Or, things like that. You talk about the abusive person. We talk about, expanding. If it's just irritation, I'll just take a breath, really. Notice I'm irritated right now. Okay. Breathe, center, come back. Include the person in my space, carry on. If you notice, this way is that I don't judge myself for being distracted. I allow myself to be distracted. But I don't fight with it. I don't fight with distraction. Because the problem comes is we fight. We start to judge and fight with the distraction. Then the train goes off that way. Our client is still here. So relational presence, is broken.
So by acknowledging and naming, as Emma mentioned, helps to bring it back into focus and have us being vulnerable, have the right to experience these distractions and these energy changes, and probably granting our clients the same as well.
Exactly. Beautifully said.
So you mentioned about cutting. What's your way to cut the box so that that's close the session and we really finish or suspend this energetic link?
Well, obviously we do what coaches do is wrap up the conversation for just making sure that there's anything they need from a rational standpoint. From an energetic standpoint is that I basically, send, again, unconditional love, but, allowing the person to go away from my bubble. So just give, I'm a Christian, so I'll just say a prayer for the session when we end and say, keep us both safe when we end this. But it is for any religion or any spiritual practice that you have, any good intention. that you can send a good intention with the person and then close it up, so that we are now disconnected again. It's like we end the call. The connection has ended.
So give your blessing and put an end.
Yeah, and other people have rituals. I've heard of, other cultures have fancy rituals, or not fancy. I mean, they have their own nice rituals. I love it, but I'm just practical to do it.
So I have a question, Felicia, because I see how that works beautifully, and I do it myself with my own little ritual within the coaching sessions. But I'm very interested if you could share something about how to manage the relational energy when you're having a short exchange with a client. For example, if you're arranging the next time to meet, and sometimes the client will bring something into those messages. For example, sometimes you're communicating with a client on WhatsApp, and you can sense what's going on for the client through those messages. So can you talk a little bit about how you manage that kind of energetic sense that you get through the virtual communication?
Yeah, very nice question. Yes, we have to expand now into these electronic and virtual communication. So when I get, messages like that, usually I would then check in with myself, with my own schedule first. Am I in a fit place? Fit in terms of, do I have the time? Do I have the attention and energy to really hold this person properly? That's first thing I'll check with myself. If I'm in the middle of a school run or something, forget it. I'm not going to do anything. I would not respond. I would not go and engage, but I have to make that decision myself. But if I choose to engage, then I would be asking, again, is coaching 101. What does the client need right now? Because I may sense, my rescuer may be in full blown and say, I want to help, I want to support, blah, blah. But I don't know what the client wants. It's all my story. I need to know what my client's story is. So that's what I mean by it's really important to check in with our own energy. And is that energy of healthy state? Because if you come in and say, sound like it's a really tough time, I really have to help, I need to be there to support, likely we are in the rescuer mode. And our energy is not as clean as it needs to be. So because once we understand that when we play the rescuer mode, someone has got to be the victim. We're making the client the victim. Yeah. So does that help, Emma?
Yes, that really helps. Thank you.
Okay.
I guess maybe you could expand a little bit though, Felicia, in terms of endings when you have a conversation with somebody and you know that their time is coming to an end. It's easy to make that, to close the session. At least there's a natural time when that session needs to be closed, and both people tend to respect that, and it happens. When it's a virtual discussion, sometimes those boundaries are less clear. Maybe you could talk a little bit to that and how you manage the closing of the energetic bubble, as it were.
Oh, okay. The virtual ones is, what is the overarching contract? You may say that there's no contract, but when you set up a coaching relationship, nowadays we have to set up the response time, how we work with you over these social medias. And do we work with you is a decision we have to make. So actually the energetic bubble is not just the situation that arises, it's the overarching.
It's the whole.
It's the whole, energetic hold. How am I going to hold you energetically throughout this period that we're working with? What we don't see is that, it's 10 sessions, 5 sessions, and that's it. But actually what we're doing is holding the client for that duration of that 10 sessions in a way. Some will say that, but after the session I'm gone. But I don't do that. I hold the person. I hold classes. That's just like you. I hold you for this whole time that we're with each other together, as you're holding me. Yeah. So how do we work with each other? So the energetic bubble is a bigger one, Emma. I think you got what I'm saying.
And it's about contracting, right?
It is about
Not only on the sessions themselves, but anything else that could happen, and sometimes recontracting along the way.
Yes. And that's very necessary. I mean, there are clients who may not remember what you contracted, or they may need something, and you feel free to recontract. And in those cases, energetically, how do I close it is a simple thing. It's just energetically how I would close a session. It's a mini session. So I make it generic. Closing to me is closing.
Yes, the point that Emma is mentioning is that you could have a WhatsApp conversation with a client, and that could be very intense for, I don't know, 10 minutes, and then nothing for another 2 hours, and then again. And so that kind of relationship can be really with different level of energy. And so you hardly know, if you haven't properly contracted, when is the end? When does that really need to stop, and am I really engaged or not? And so I guess beyond the energy management, we probably also need to review the contracting, and what contracting, or have a strong agreement around that, because otherwise we can be really drained.
Yeah. And the other thing that brings to mind is that actually, because it's so nebulous, actually we don't know when to stop, when to start, how did this even happen? This kind of, excuse the word, entanglement on social media. How did it even begin? And I think this is why I say, it's great to go for supervision, because you can then really slow down and have a look. When did it start? What was triggered for that event? What was happening for you as a coach? And because in supervision, we look at the coach as a practitioner as a whole. Clients and everything become external systems, right? That's coach supervision. And we start to look at, is this a pattern for you? Is this, how do you handle this kind of on-off relationship? Even if it's WhatsApp, it's a relationship. That what's going on in your relational presence there? Energetically, rationally. So yeah, it's a great place to bring it's a great topic to bring to supervision. Which any of our supervisors will be gladly there to help you, any of the sessions.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And there's a good webinar on contracting that we did yesterday. So that could be nice to revert to that too. I have a question around group. Would you share if there's any difference in terms of you setting the scene, you setting the intention, you holding the energy when you have a group rather than an individual?
Yes, a group is very much more complex, as you can understand, because it's one times, if there's 7 people in the group, there's 7 families, including mine, and 7 systems that they're bringing in. So energetically, you need to be able to hold, a peripersonal space needs to be practiced so that you can hold that entire system. You don't have to control it. It's different from controlling. The hold is just to allow and to just hold it, be able to hold the space for all that to happen. So what it demands of the supervisors or coach or your facilitator is in order not to make it into a rational exchange of thoughts. You want true intimacy in the group. Then what you're actually doing is holding them and their systems in your bubble energetically. That's what we're talking about. And it's sometimes very hard to explain to people, why is it so difficult? But it's complex with all the dynamics going on.
So there's the dynamic, and the modality would probably be the same, but at a higher level, because you expand your own bubble to include all these crowd.
all these beautiful people in that system with all their beautiful habits and practices and different ways of showing love to each other that we may not understand.
Yes. That could be a good point for you, Felicia, to remember us or to remind us what are the benefits of this energy management in terms of coaching. What does that bring?
Okay, well, energy management. I think we know that in order to be fit for work, we need to be physically fit, mentally fit, and this is what I call energetically fit, because this is something that we often overlook, and because our body has a tendency to, when we're adrenaline rushed, we ignore a lot of our energetic signals, and so you see quite a number of coaches getting very drained, needing a long retreat to recover. So all these are signs that we've been ignoring our energetic side of ourselves. So that's one thing. So secondly, I think it's even more, they're all of equal importance, is that when we are not fit, or we are actually doing energy exchange with our clients, some of our unfitness can flow into that system. Some of that unfitness can flow into our system. And systemically, what we're doing is sharing our unfit. Yeah. So to put it positively is that in order to make our job as a coach, I mean, I think it's a big assumption, but I think it's quite a right assumption that we want to bring positive change to this world. We want to have a positive impact and get people to move forward, do all the nice stuff, yeah? Even though it may not be the nicest stuff that they have to do in the corporates or whatever. So can you imagine that if we can start bringing positive energetic change from an energy perspective, from a field perspective, that's the impact we're talking about that we don't ever think about, or I hardly think about until I come into the field of energy. And then these people go out and interact with their systems. So again, it's an untapped potential in our world, really, energy. So that's why I think it's so important. And not many people want to come out and talk about energy because, one can get labeled as woo-woo or, spiritual or whatever. But I feel very strongly for it because I think I've been studying about it around using the angle of neuroscience, using the angle of quantum physics. I want to be able to make it easily accessible. And yet I know I'm on solid ground. And I know, I could see it happening. And when you lead a group, when you're with people, when people can come into relational presence with you and be themselves, I think that's the most beautiful thing we can do for each other.
Yes. I usually see from coaches who are beginning that, and I had that as well, when we have to coach people one after the other, and we're so enthusiastic into doing it, then we notice that second session is not as good, just because we're so drained. It's so, I mean, obviously there's a mental investment.
Sure.
The kind of focus and deep listening that we need to bring in is definitely consuming energy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also probably something around this energy management that we may or may not have done so properly that we are not really taking care of ourselves either. It goes back to being fit and probably have this little space to ground ourselves again, as well as to close the previous session properly.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, when you talk about that, what I'm getting is that we are probably holding the space a bit too tight for each session. When we are saying holding the space, it's a very gentle, relaxed, almost like you're doing nothing kind of energy or force. Yeah. And it's just out of flow and all that. So if you're consciously, in the beginning when I practiced, I felt that, like, oh, I'm holding this group, or oh, then next I'm going to have the next conversation. But the more you practice, the more you just, it's a way of life. It's anyone that you come into contact to, you're basically holding them in a bubble, right? And then you start to notice things that you never quite noticed on the road and all that, because as you walk, your bubble is with you. You can't leave your bubble behind. Just how big or small, right? So as you hold everything in that bubble, it becomes easier. One conversation leads to another. Yes, I do say there is a physical aspect to it. That is a given. But apart from that, energy shouldn't be using up more energy. Holding space, holding space should be, in fact, more energizing, so that you can do one more or hold another group with ease.
And holding space for us as well, meaning that listening to ourselves and also including ourselves, our needs in that, in the sense that we are in service of the client, absolutely. But to be there, we absolutely need true to ourselves and not forget ourselves and sacrificing all along the way.
Yeah, if no one has talked about it, I think in CSA we often remind our supervisors and coaches is that our attention should be 80% on ourselves and 20% with the client. It may be contrary to what people think about presence, but actually in true relational presence, that's about the right amount of attention split. Because we think of attention as very focused, very, like I must follow every word the client says, which is not true. It was not possible as well, right? Because you then just see the trees and you lose the forest. In energy, it's different. When you listen for the energy. It's like, oh, there's a spike there. What's going on there? Right? And so we can do energy in all different forms and ways of putting that into our coaching practice. And my reminder to ourselves, myself, and to all that's listening is 80% of attention is on ourselves. What's going on here? Because what's going on here has a direct impact on the person opposite me or the people in front of me.
So I would be a best gauge tool for what's happening.
Yeah, using self as an instrument.
Definitely. Thank you, Felicia. Would you have a last question, Emma, so that if you need, we don't want to have you walking away without your answer. If you do.
I was actually going to ask Felicia about, and I don't know if we have time because this is a big topic I'm raising now, so please let me know if we don't have time. But I was going to ask Felicia if she can share some wisdom about somatics, so the body, and also our energetic field and the relationship between the two.
It's a big topic. Let me try and understand a bit more. What is your most interested question in that question? What do you want to know most?
So I think as a coach, I sometimes get somatic, somatic experiences, which might be things that are related to me, but they might be related to the client also. And I'm interested in how that links together with the energetic field and how the two can work together.
Okay, so we won't talk about the part around if it's yours, because you know that some story in your psyche has triggered that. So we'll talk from a perspective that is in the field. Something is in the field that created that somatic fear and anxiety. I cannot breathe, kind of bodily reaction. that is how that's related to energy, is that they are actually information waves that's in the field that we're tapping into. Our body is the biggest organ, yeah? And our skin is the biggest organ. So our skin actually picks up all these waves and it gets introduced into our system, our nervous system, which then, reproduce the somatic responses. It's very quick. So what's happening is that from an energy perspective, so it's actually quantum waves or information arriving, touches the skin, the body translates it, the brain processes it, boom, somatic experience. So we often think, if you read at Theory U, or they will be saying some quantum physicist presence, they will talk about downloading from the field, and that's how I interpret it, to be downloading from the field. It can be some spiritual, someone knocking at my head, but I tend to believe it's an energetic messages within the field that I'm receiving through my skin. To make it as succinct as I can in response to that question.
You. I know it's a huge topic. Thank you very much, Felicia.
You're welcome. Okay.
Thank you, Felicia. So we had really lots of opportunity to explore this topic about how to increase our relational presence, to expand our bubble, to include people and hold them in the highest regard. So that even if we sometimes need to switch a little bit our focus, we're distracted and we bring it back, and we tend to observe ourselves even more than the client, to understand what's happening, naming it, bring it back to the coaching, so that we can enrich the conversation or bring some new awareness of what's happening, and making sure that we also close and end our session properly. So I will just go through the slides where you have a nice quote that you wanted to share with us. Yes. It would be a nice way to also close our session energetically.
Yes, that's right. Are you going to put up the slide, or?
I will.
Thank you.
So just before this quote, we have you wanted to share some resources, or?
Well, if people are really want to know a little bit more, have a different understanding of energy, these are the things I've been reading, and I thought might be a good recommendation. So Power versus Force by David R. Hawkins. This is where the famous chart where he talked about different levels of feelings generates a different level of consciousness, and to me is a level of resonance. So love, which is at a resonance of 500 and above. So we always talk about, if we do anything from a place of love, the resonance is very high, and there's very high possibility that the other person will start to resonate with you. So that's Power versus Force. The intuitive body and leadership embodiment is, Wendy Palmer's work, where I learn about, how our body has so much body memory, and how it can be a true asset to us as coaches and as human beings. So that's my recommendation for a read. And then we can move on to the energetic field, which is a bit that I've taken out of the Intuitive Body, the book. So there's a chapter on the energetic field that Wendy wrote about. And I'm borrowing this quote that she has quoted. It says that there is a basic state of existence that is fundamentally good and that we can rely on. There is room to relax, room to open up ourselves, and we can make friends with ourselves and others. This is by Chung-Yam Trungpa.
Thank you. That's a beautiful ending.
You're welcome.
Making sense with ourselves and others, and yes, have that blessing to part. And so if we want to have this, to go a bit deeper in this topic, actually ACSM is organizing a series of online group supervision, and one will be held by Felicia around energy management, and they're 3 days spread out over several months. So it's about 2 hours every sessions, and we will have it in a group. So up to 3 supervisors with Felicia in each group. And we have put here the details in terms of pricing, and the easy way to register is just to go on the ACSM Asia website, so that you can easily select and pick the best timing that suits you and the best topic. So thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom, Felicia. It's been really a pleasure to have this special place to share about energy and to be together. So we all go with our deepest blessing in our different ways, and really looking forward to new opportunity to connect with everyone.
Definitely. Go well. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 So I just do my best to, yes.
So live, it's still live on Facebook.